When you reach a point in life where every door feels locked, every opportunity seems distant, and every effort appears fruitless, there comes a moment when your spirit whispers a question. Is there a way to rise without depending on a job? And the truth is this: when you let God guide you, He does not merely open doors, He builds new doors where walls once stood. There is a divine pathway to wealth that does not require you to bow before employers, chase after approval, or wait for someone to hire you. If you allow God to take you by the hand, He can lead you into a realm where your provision flows directly from His wisdom, not from the salary of men. You must understand this. From the very first breath of this message, God never intended for your destiny to be controlled by a paycheck. He placed greatness inside you, not so you could submit to the limits of human systems, but so you could rise by the limitless power of His guidance. There are moments in life when God allows the job to dry up so the well within you can finally be discovered. Sometimes the lack of employment is not a punishment. It is a summons, a divine invitation, a call to step into the wealth God placed within you long before you ever knew what a job was. But when people lose their income, fear begins to whisper, anxiety begins to shout, doubt begins to cloud the mind, yet God stands firm, unmoved, unchanged, declaring to your spirit, if you let me lead you, you will never walk empty-handed. Wealth without a job is not only possible, it is attainable when your source is God. A job is one stream, God is the entire ocean. A job is one pathway, God holds infinite routes. You must tear down the belief that wealth can only come through employment. That belief is a chain. That belief is a prison. That belief is a limitation instilled into you by a world that fears people who are truly empowered by God. When you depend on a job, you depend on humans. When you depend on God, you tap into a source that cannot be shut down, cannot be restricted, and cannot be controlled. God can give you ideas that produce wealth. God can place your name in the minds of people who need what you carry. God can turn your skills into streams, your creativity into income, your resilience into profit, your wisdom into opportunity. Wealth begins with guidance, not labor. Wealth begins with revelation, not employment. Wealth begins with obedience, not occupation. The greatest mistake people make is assuming that having no job means having no future. But when God becomes your guide, your steps are no longer measured by the marketplace. Your worth is no longer defined by the economy. Your destiny is no longer tied to a corporate system. God can bless you in ways that make no logical sense to those who limit themselves to what society offers. God can bring wealth to your life through ways that human minds cannot predict. Ideas nobody thought of, opportunities others overlooked, solutions no one noticed, gifts you never realized were valuable. But for you to access that level of divine wealth, your mind must shift from survival to submission, from fear to faith, from waiting for permission to walking in purpose. Many people stay trapped because they look for God to bless them through what is familiar. But God often leads you into wealth through the unfamiliar, the unseen, the unpredictable. If you follow only what feels safe, you will stay where you are. The path God will show you will stretch you, challenge you, pull you higher, and demand that you trust more deeply. When you ask God to guide you into wealth, prepare to step into places that you never planned to enter, use skills you never valued, and make decisions you never thought yourself capable of making. God does not lead you to wealth the way the world leads you. The world says, get a job, work endlessly, hope for a raise, retire eventually. God says, step into what I place in your heart and I will multiply it. The world says, wait for someone to hire you. God says, I have already equipped you. Move. Wealth without a job does not mean wealth without work. It means wealth without bondage. It means your effort is aligned with divine direction, not human expectation. It means God gives you clarity on where to put your hands so what you touch prospers. Without God's guidance, people labor without fruit, hustle without direction, and chase money like a shadow that constantly slips away. But with God's guidance, you do less and receive more because you are moving in the current of divine timing. Wealth flows when you are positioned by God. If you allow God to govern your decisions, every step you take becomes fertile ground. Every idea you pursue gains supernatural wind. Every plan you execute aligns with opportunities you didn't see coming. People who follow God's leading do not chase wealth. Wealth begins to chase them. There are people watching this right now who have been frustrated, discouraged, even embarrassed because they do not have a job. But hear this truth, God sometimes removes all human support so He can become your source. When you have a job, you can still convince yourself that you are providing for yourself. But when the job is gone, when the income stops, when the bank account begins to shrink, that is when God whispers, now let me show you what I can do. Do not mistake your lack of employment for a lack of destiny. God sometimes clears the table so He can place something new upon it. He sometimes stops the income you depended on so He can start the income He designed for you. The delay is not a denial, it is a redirection. You are being guided into wealth that does not collapse with the economy, does not depend on the decisions of others, and does not require you to surrender your peace for survival. When you begin to seek God's direction, something powerful begins to shift inside you. Your spirit becomes attentive. Your mind becomes open. Your heart becomes bold. God begins to show you things you ignored, skills you undervalued, passions you suppressed. He begins to highlight the gifts hidden within you. Gifts that were overshadowed by your job. Gifts that were silenced by routine. Gifts that were pushed aside because you were too busy surviving. God does not guide you into wealth by giving you more jobs. He guides you by revealing your value. And when you recognize the value God has placed within you, you begin to understand that wealth was never outside of you. It was inside you, waiting to be activated. You must stop saying, I need a job, and begin saying, I need God's direction. A job can fail you. God cannot. A job can delay you. God accelerates. A job can underpay you. God multiplies. A job can fire you. God establishes you. When you let God guide you, He positions you in ways that defy logic. He connects you with people who become divine bridges. He closes doors that would waste your time. He opens doors that no human could shut. He leads you into opportunities that were created with your name on them long before you were born. Wealth without a job is not about laziness. It is about alignment. It is about moving in step with what God designed for you rather than settling for what society assigns to you. Many people ask, if I don't have a job, how can I make money? But the better question is, God, what have you put in me that can produce wealth? God never creates without purpose. He never forms without gifting. He never brings someone into this world empty. You are not here to merely survive off wages. You are here to reveal the greatness God planted within you. The moment you ask God sincerely to guide you, He will begin to reveal the path. That path may come in the form of an idea. It may come in the form of a person. It may come in the form of sudden clarity. It may come in the form of a burden in your heart that refuses to let you go. When God guides, it feels like a pull, gentle yet undeniable. You feel drawn toward something, even if it intimidates you. That is God pointing you toward your wealth. Wealth without a job often comes from using what God gave you rather than what the world gave you. Some of you have gifts of communication that can open doors to consulting, coaching, speaking. Some of you have creativity that can turn ideas into products, designs, solutions. Some of you have skills that can solve problems for others. Some of you have wisdom that people desperately need. Some of you have resilience that can be transformed into service. But the problem is not that you lack gifts. The problem is that you were trained to depend on employment instead of empowerment. When God guides you, He teaches you how to use what He placed in your hands. He teaches you how to turn your abilities into resources. He teaches you how to convert your God-given identity into God-provided income. Let God guide you, and you will begin to think differently. You will stop living like a limited being and start living like someone backed by the Creator of the universe. Fear will begin to break. Doubt will begin to dissolve. Timidity will begin to fade. When God becomes your guide, confidence rises, not because you believe in yourself alone, but because you trust the one who directs your path. Wealth begins with identity. Wealth begins with knowing who you are. If you believe you are small, you will live small. If you believe you are unworthy, you will accept crumbs. If you believe your life is limited, you will settle for less. But when you believe that God has chosen you for more, your spirit expands, your vision grows, your decisions elevate. You stop surviving and you begin walking with intention. There are people who have jobs but remain poor because they work outside of God's direction. There are people with no jobs who grow wealthy because every step they take is aligned with divine strategy. Wealth follows obedience. Wealth follows clarity. Wealth follows God's guidance. When you allow God to govern your thinking, He shows you pathways that others overlook. He gives you creative solutions. He gives you insights that others cannot see. He places ideas in your heart that refuse to leave until you act. These divine ideas are seeds, and when planted, they grow into streams of wealth. The reason so many people remain stuck is because they dismiss the seeds God gives them. They ignore the ideas that seem small, unusual, or unconventional. But wealth often begins with the seed that looks insignificant until it grows. God will guide you into wealth by reshaping the way you perceive yourself. If you see yourself as someone who needs to be hired, you will wait for opportunities. But if you see yourself as someone God has chosen to create, to lead, to serve, to innovate, then you become the opportunity. Wealth without a job is not about bypassing responsibility. It is about stepping into a higher identity. You are not here to be a follower of systems. You are here to be a creator of value. You are not here to be dependent on employers. You are here to be dependent on God. And when you depend on God, you operate from a place of endless supply. God's abundance is not limited by the structures of society. God does not look at the economy to decide your success. God's guidance is your economy, your strategy, your foundation. Many of you have been praying for income, but what you truly need is insight. Income follows insight. Wealth follows revelation. When God illuminates your next step, you will notice that doors open naturally. You will notice that opportunities find you. You will notice that people are drawn to what you offer. You will notice that progress accelerates effortlessly. Wealth without a job is not a miracle you wait for. It is a path you walk with God. Every day you listen. Every day you obey. Every day you move in the direction God highlights. Sometimes He will lead you to learn something new. Sometimes He will lead you to speak to someone specific. Sometimes He will lead you to start something small. Sometimes He will lead you to release something old. The guidance of God is not always loud, but it is always clear to the heart that seeks Him. The world teaches you to seek security in employment. God teaches you to seek security in Him. As long as you rely on jobs, you will fear losing them. But when you rely on God, even loss becomes a pathway to greater gain. When God becomes your guide, you lose your fear of being without a job because you understand that your real employer is the one who created the universe. God does not hire you, He sends you, He equips you, He positions you, He establishes you. And once God establishes you, no one can uproot what He has planted in your life. Wealth without a job means you are no longer a slave to systems. You become a steward of divine guidance. Some of you have been waiting for life to shift, but God is waiting for you to move. You pray for change, but God is asking for obedience. You pray for wealth, but God is asking you to follow His direction. Do not underestimate the power of small steps. When you walk with God, even small steps become powerful movements. Even simple actions produce extraordinary results. If God leads you to start something, start it. If God leads you to learn something, learn it. If God leads you to reach out to someone, reach out. Wealth flows when you follow God one step at a time. The path may not be fully visible, but the one guiding you sees the entire journey. And He will never lead you into failure. He will never guide you into lack. He will never position you for defeat. God's guidance always leads to abundance. Let God guide you, and you will notice that your intuition becomes sharper. You begin to feel when something is right and when it is not. You begin to sense opportunities before others notice them. You begin to understand what to pursue and what to avoid. This is God aligning your spirit with His direction. Wealth requires discernment. Not every opportunity is from God. Not every offer is divine. Not every path leads to abundance. But when God is guiding you, you will know which door to walk through and which door to ignore. You will know which ideas to pursue and which to release. You will know when to wait and when to act. Discernment is a form of wealth because it protects your time, your energy, and your purpose. As you follow God's direction, you will also begin to develop a boldness that intimidates people who rely on fear to make decisions. You will speak differently. You will think differently. You will move differently. You will make choices that others consider risky, but you will know deep in your spirit that God is backing you. People who let God guide them do not fear uncertainty. They walk into it with confidence because they understand that uncertainty is the space where God does His greatest work. Wealth without a job requires courage. It requires faith. It requires trust. And when you trust God relentlessly, He responds with provision abundantly. Your courage becomes the trigger for divine opportunities. Some of you have dreams that have been dormant for years because your job consumed your time, drained your energy, and limited your creativity. Now that you are free from that job, God is reviving those dreams. He is awakening desires that once felt impossible. He is reminding you of visions you buried. When God guides you into wealth, He resurrects the things inside you that were suffocated by survival. You were not born to spend your life building another person's dream. You were born to manifest what God placed inside your own spirit. Wealth without a job is not about escaping responsibility. It is about stepping into divine purpose. When you walk in purpose, resources flow naturally. People are drawn to purpose. Opportunities are drawn to purpose. Wealth magnetizes toward purpose. Let God guide you, and He will teach you how to create value the world did not know it needed. Many of the greatest sources of wealth came from people who followed a conviction that did not make sense to anyone else. They followed a whisper inside them. They followed a vision. They followed an idea that felt too bold for their surroundings. When God guides you, the ideas He gives you may seem strange, too big or too unconventional, but do not dismiss them. God does not give ordinary ideas. He gives destiny-shaping ideas. If you follow them, they will lead you to wealth that a job could never provide. The path God shows you may require you to grow. You may need to develop new habits. You may need to break old mindsets. You may need to let go of people who cannot go where God is taking you. Wealth requires expansion. It requires maturity. It requires discipline. God will guide you, but He will also refine you. He will stretch your thinking. He will strengthen your character. He will test your patience. All of this is preparation. God cannot give wealth to someone who is not mentally, emotionally, and spiritually ready to carry it. When you follow God's guidance, you are not just gaining wealth. You are becoming a person capable of sustaining it. And the more you follow God, the more you will recognize that wealth is not just money. Wealth is clarity. Wealth is peace. Wealth is freedom. Wealth is vision. Wealth is purpose. Wealth is divine alignment. When you walk with God, He will give you wealth in every form. Money becomes a tool, not a master. Resources become instruments for purpose. Abundance becomes a lifestyle of impact. And you will realize that God guided you to wealth not so you could boast, but so you could become a living testimony of what happens when a person surrenders completely to divine direction. Let God guide you and you will rise. Let God guide you and you will prosper. Let God guide you and you will see wealth manifest in ways you never imagined. He does not need a job to bless you. He does not need a company to hire you. He does not need a system to accept you. All He needs is your willingness to follow. All He needs is your openness. All He needs is your yes. When God begins to guide a person into wealth without a job, He does something even more profound than providing income. He transforms the architecture of that person's mind. The way you think expands. The way you see the world changes. You begin to see opportunities where others only see obstacles. You begin to sense potential where others only sense pressure. This transformation is the foundation of divine wealth. A job conditions you to think in straight lines, to follow narrow routines, to obey structures built by others. But when God is the one leading you, your spirit becomes creative, fluid, visionary. Suddenly, what once looked impossible begins to feel inevitable. You start recognizing that the limitations you once accepted were never placed on you by God. They were placed on you by environments that feared your potential. When God guides you, He breaks every mental barrier that keeps you living beneath your calling. God-guided wealth begins with awareness. You begin to recognize that the world is not run by those with the most resources, but those with the clearest revelation. God does not begin your wealth journey by placing money in your hands. He begins by placing wisdom in your spirit. Wisdom is the true currency of divine increase. Wisdom determines how you see. Wisdom determines how you decide. Wisdom determines how you respond. And when you walk under the weight of God-given wisdom, you are no longer moved by fear or pressure. You are moved by clarity. You are moved by conviction. You are moved by understanding. This is why God often leads a person away from a job, because the job sometimes suppresses spiritual clarity. It keeps you performing tasks instead of hearing God's direction. It keeps you dependent on schedules instead of divine prompting. When God removes the noise, He increases the volume of His guidance. One of the greatest shifts that happens when you let God guide you is that you stop asking, what can I get? And start asking, what can I give? Jobs teach you to believe that your value comes from what you receive. God teaches you that value comes from what you release. Wealth does not flow to people who ask only for provision. Wealth flows to people who ask to become vessels of provision. When you ask God to guide you toward wealth, prepare for Him to expand your capacity to serve. You will notice needs around you that you never noticed before. You will see problems that your skills can solve. You will feel burdens that God wants you to answer. Wealth is not the reward. Wealth is the result of walking in divine contribution. When God guides you, He shows you how your purpose can be a blessing to others. And in that blessing, He releases provision to you. There is a sacred boldness that rises in people when they stop relying on jobs and start relying on God. A boldness that does not come from arrogance but from alignment. A boldness that stands firm even when circumstances shake. A boldness that refuses to shrink when challenges appear. This boldness is essential on the path to wealth without a job, because the moment you step into unfamiliar territory, fear tries to return. Doubt tries to whisper. Anxiety tries to pull you backward. But when your confidence is not built on your abilities but on God's direction, fear loses its grip. You begin to move with a certainty that others do not understand. They ask, "Why are you so calm?" They ask, "Why are you so confident?" They ask, "Why are you so determined?" And your spirit knows the answer: God is guiding me. And when God guides, the outcome is already secured. Wealth guided by God comes through divine timing. There are seasons where nothing seems to move, not because God is absent, but because God is preparing. Your mind is being sharpened. Your spiritual senses are being heightened. Your inner strength is being fortified. God never releases wealth to someone who is unprepared to maintain it. A job pays you immediately, but divine wealth prepares you first, then lifts you into a place where the increase is lasting, consistent, and transformative. When God directs you, He aligns your timing with opportunities that would have passed you by if you were still working in your own strength. There are blessings that do not appear unless you are positioned spiritually, emotionally, and mentally to receive them. God is not simply preparing the opportunity for you. He is preparing you for the opportunity. The moment you submit your desires, your ambitions, and your plans to God, something supernatural begins to unfold. You find yourself meeting the right people at the right time. You find yourself receiving ideas at moments when you least expect them. You find yourself entering spaces you didn't plan to enter, yet they feel divinely orchestrated. This is the difference between being guided by God and being guided by chance. Chance produces randomness. God produces alignment. And when alignment manifests, the wealth that flows is not fragile. It is founded, it is not unstable, it is rooted, it is not temporary, it is sustained. Many people think wealth without a job means suddenly stumbling into riches, but divine wealth is not random, it is structured. God is a God of order. When He guides you, He establishes patterns in your life that attract increase. He teaches you consistency, He teaches you discipline, He teaches you patience. Wealth without a job requires you to maintain an inner posture that is steady even when external circumstances shift. There will be days when the path feels unclear, but clarity will come if you stay in alignment. There will be moments when you feel uncertain, but conviction will rise if you stay connected to God. The path to divine wealth is not always smooth, but it is always secure for those who stay anchored in God's direction. There are treasures God placed in you that were never meant to be activated inside the environment of a job. Some destinies require independence. Some callings require space. Some assignments require freedom. Some gifts require separation. When God wants to elevate you into wealth without a job, He often pulls you away from environments that limit your creativity, restrict your growth, and confine your potential. You may not understand the shift at first. You may feel confused. You may wonder why certain doors closed. But later, you begin to see that God was not removing you from stability. He was removing you from containment. You were never created to be confined by structures built for the masses. You were created to be led by the voice that formed the universe. Letting God guide you means allowing Him to reveal the deeper layers of who you are. You are not a worker. You are not a follower. You are not defined by titles, roles, or employment. You are a vessel of purpose. You are a carrier of divine identity. And wealth becomes inevitable when you start living from your identity instead of your insecurity. Jobs often allow people to hide behind tasks. But when God leads you into independence, you must stand fully in who you are. You cannot hide your gifts. You cannot shrink your value. You cannot downplay your abilities. God elevates you by requiring you to reveal the strength He placed within you. That revelation is the birthplace of divine wealth. A person guided by God begins to see wealth as a responsibility, not a reward. When you understand that wealth is meant to flow through you, not just to you, your perspective shifts. You stop seeking accumulation and start seeking alignment. You stop chasing money and start pursuing purpose. You stop fearing lack and start embracing divine abundance. And in that shift, wealth begins to move in your direction. God never guides someone into wealth simply for comfort. He guides them into wealth for impact. When you become a vessel that God can trust, He increases what He places in your life. Your obedience becomes the magnet for divine resources. As you continue to walk under God's direction, you will notice that you begin to attract opportunities that align with who you truly are. You will no longer force yourself into environments that drain you. You will no longer chase after people who do not value you. You will no longer settle for what is beneath your calling. When God guides you, He elevates your standards. You begin to realize that enough is not God's plan for you. Abundance is. You begin to recognize that mediocrity is not your portion. Excellence is. You begin to understand that survival is not your destiny. Overflow is. A job teaches you to settle. God teaches you to expand. Another powerful truth emerges when you let God guide you. Your relationship with time changes. When you rely on jobs, time feels like a burden. You wait for weekends, you wait for breaks, you wait for vacations. But when God becomes your source, time becomes a canvas. Every moment holds potential. Every day carries opportunity. You stop counting hours and start counting idea. You stop waiting for permission and start creating openings. Time becomes a partner, not an enemy. And wealth manifests when time is used with purpose rather than wasted in routine. There is also a deep spiritual strengthening that occurs on this journey. When you let God guide you, you learn to depend on Him for every step. Even when the path feels uncertain, you discover that God is never unclear. He simply reveals in stages. You learn to take action even when you cannot see the full picture. You learn to move even when you have only one instruction. Divine wealth requires faith-driven motion. God does not show you the full staircase, He shows you the next step. And when you obey that step, the next one appears. This is how God builds people who can handle abundance. He builds their trust, one decision at a time. As you continue letting God lead, you also begin to realize something extraordinary. You no longer measure wealth by numbers alone. Wealth becomes a flow. Wealth becomes an energy. Wealth becomes a consequence of being in alignment with God's will. Opportunities start coming to you. People begin seeking you. Doors open without force. Paths become clear without struggle. Your life becomes a living demonstration of what happens when a human spirit fully yields to God's guidance. The world may try to understand it, but they cannot explain it because it is not human achievement. It is divine orchestration. And when this divine orchestration begins to shape your life, you will notice that provision arrives in ways you never predicted. Sometimes God sends provision through people, sometimes through unexpected open doors, sometimes through ideas that suddenly spark in your heart, sometimes through situations that look like setbacks but become setups for something greater. When God guides you, even what seems unfavorable becomes part of your divine strategy. You will begin to thank God not only for what He gives, but for what He removes. Not only for what He opens, but for what He blocks. Not only for what He provides, but for what He protects you from. Divine protection is part of divine wealth. God will never allow you to step into something that does not align with your purpose. Let God guide you, and you will discover strengths within yourself you never knew existed. You will find resilience where there used to be fear. You will find determination where there used to be hesitation. You will find clarity where there used to be confusion. You will find confidence where there used to be insecurity. This inner transformation becomes your wealth before any financial increase even arrives. Because once God strengthens your spirit, no worldly challenge can stop you. Once God opens your mind, no limitation can restrain you. Once God expands your vision, no environment can shrink you. As you walk deeper into this God-guided journey, you will also find that your desires begin to align with your destiny. You no longer crave what the world glorifies. You no longer envy what others possess. You no longer chase after superficial success. Instead, you crave growth. You crave alignment. You crave impact. You crave purpose. These desires are the markers of someone who is being prepared for true wealth. Wealth without a job is not a shortcut, it is a calling. And God does not call the unprepared, He prepares the called. The more you walk with God, the more you realize that lack is not your inheritance, scarcity is not your identity, struggle is not your destiny. You were not created to live under the weight of financial fear. You are not created to depend on unstable systems. You are not created to live paycheck to paycheck. You were created to operate from abundance. You were created to manifest divine provision. You were created to reflect the greatness of the one who shaped your spirit. Wealth without a job is simply the manifestation of the freedom God intended for you all along. Continue letting God guide you. Continue trusting His timing. Continue following His nudges. Continue obeying His direction. Because every step you take in alignment with God brings you closer to the reality He has already prepared for you. And when you reach that place, when the wealth begins to flow, when the opportunities unfold, when the increase becomes visible, you will understand that none of it occurred because of luck or coincidence. It happened because you surrendered to the one who knows the path better than you do.